They always said the American F-4 Phantom was the king of the sky. No aircraft climbed faster. No fighter could match its twin-engine power. And once it went straight up into vertical, nothing could catch it. In every NATO briefing, pilots were told that the Phantom owned the high sky. By comparison, the British Lightning was talked about like an antique small, limited on fuel, designed only to intercept bombers, and far too old-fashioned for modern dogfights. Most American crews had never feared it. They saw it as fast, yes, but too specialized, too short-legged, and too simple to be a real challenge. But one cold, clear day during a NATO training exercise, that belief was shattered. On that day, a single RAF Lightning pilot showed everyone that a jet isn't deadly because of its size or reputation, but because of how well a pilot understands the space around him. Both sides met for a pre-flight briefing. American flight leads stood confidently around maps filled with engagement zones and altitude blocks. Their strategy was straightforward. Take the high altitude early, then force the fight from above. Our strength is the vertical, the U.S. commander said casually. If we take height, we control the merge. No one disagreed. The Lightning crews sat quietly on the other side of the room. Their doctrine was completely different. The Lightning wasn't made for long fights or fancy maneuvering. It was built to climb fast, hit hard, and get out before the enemy had time to react. Its entire mission philosophy was simple. Gain altitude, attack in one pass, and never stay long enough to lose energy or fuel. While the Phantom was a multi-role heavyweight, the Lightning was a spear the kind you throw once with deadly precision. On the runway, the Lightning looked almost too small to matter. With its needle-thin body, tiny wings, and engine stacked on top of one another, it looked more like a rocket testing platform than a fighter plane. The Phantom, by comparison, sat broad and powerful with huge intakes, deep fuel tanks, and enough missiles to make it look born for dominance. And on the ground, the Phantom certainly looked like the superior machine. But once both jets took off, appearances began to mean less and less. The American Phantoms climbed smoothly toward medium altitude, spreading out into a wide formation that gave them strong radar coverage and plenty of room to maneuver. The Lightning climbed too, but not the way anyone expected. Instead of rising gradually like the Phantoms, the British pilot pointed his jet almost straight up and lit both afterburners. The tiny aircraft leapt skyward with frightening speed, its climb so steep that it almost looked wrong. In the Phantom's radar display, the Lightning's climb angle didn't match the expected profile. The radar operator frowned and muttered, "He's climbing way too steeply." The pilot shrugged, "Probably just showing off. He'll stall out soon." But the Lightning did not stall. It just kept going. Within seconds, it climbed to Phantom Formation's optimized radar search zone. Then the contact simply disappeared. At more than 50,000 feet, the Lightning leveled off briefly. Its contrail thinned, stretched, and then vanished into the upper atmosphere. Below, the Phantoms continued their steady sweep, unaware that the British jet had essentially climbed out of the world they were scanning. The sky above them looked empty, and no one bothered to check further up. That was exactly the mistake the Lightning pilot had been waiting for. After stabilizing at a very high altitude, the Lightning rolled upside down and pushed the nose forward, diving fast. Gravity did the work for him. With almost no drag, the jet accelerated like a falling arrow. The Phantom crews never saw it coming. One moment the sky above them was empty, and the next a small, dark speck appeared growing larger and faster every second. By the time they realized it was diving toward them, it was too late. The Lightning streaked through the center of the Phantom Formation like a thrown spear. The exercise scoring system beeped a green kill tone. One Phantom down. Radios exploded with shocked voices. The Lightning didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't look back. It simply blasted downward, then climbed away again before the Americans could do anything. The entire fight had lasted seconds, and a long-held belief had cracked. Vertical dominance wasn't about having two engines. It was about using altitude creatively. The Phantom flight lead immediately ordered his pilots to adjust their scans. Everyone maintained vertical watch. No one gets caught looking down again. The Americans reorganized. They split into two altitude layers, one high, one medium to trap the Lightning and force it into a turning fight, where its small wings and limited fuel would work against it. It was a smart plan. The Lightning pilot noticed the change instantly, and he also knew he was running low on fuel already. His aircraft was incredibly powerful, but it burned fuel like a flame on full blast. He had only a few minutes left to fight before he'd have to return to base. If the Americans kept him busy long enough, he wouldn't survive the exercise. The Phantoms now tried to force him into a predictable fight. One climbed aggressively to match him, while the others boxed him in from the sides. This time, instead of diving immediately, the Lightning leveled off and turned horizontally. It was the first time he'd tried to maneuver like a normal fighter, and the Americans seized the opportunity. Two Phantoms surged upward and entered a turning fight with him. This was the Lightning's weak spot. It excelled in climbing, not turning. As the jet tried to keep up with the Phantom's sweeping arcs, it began to lose speed quickly. Drag increased. Warnings chirped inside the cockpit. Fuel continued to fall. It looked like the Americans finally had him. But the Lightning pilot remained calm. He didn't try to win the turn. Instead, he did something unexpected, something most pilots would never dare. He pulled the nose up vertically again, even though he did not have the speed for a proper climb. The aircraft shot upward, bleeding speed rapidly, almost stalling. The Phantoms followed instinctively, afterburners blazing, trying not to lose sight of him. But they were heavier, carrying more fuel and more weapons, and as they followed him into the climb, their own engines couldn't maintain energy. Their climb rates collapsed. At the top of his near-stalling climb, the Lightning pilot performed a hammerhead turn. The aircraft pivoted around its nose and flipped downward. Now he was pointed straight at the two struggling Phantoms below him, both nose up, slow, and nearly powerless. He dove past them with perfect firing geometry. The scoring system beeped again, another kill. The Lightning fell away before either Phantom could regain speed or position. The Americans were stunned, but the Lightning pilot had no time to celebrate. His fuel light was now glowing steadily. He had maybe 3 minutes left before it became dangerous. The Phantom flight leads realized they no longer needed to beat him in a dogfight. All they needed to do was contain him, keep him busy until his fuel ran out. They coordinated a tight box around the Lightning. One Phantom climbed to block any vertical escape. Another pair waited at mid-altitude. A trailing jet sat behind him, ready to pressure any turn he made. The sky shrank around the Lightning until every direction held a threat. The British pilot tried to climb again, but Phantom moved into place and blocked the path. He tried to turn, left another Phantom cut off the angle. He turned, right another wall. The sea loomed below. Warning sounded inside the cockpit. This was the exact situation the Lightning was not designed to survive. The aircraft had no room to climb, no ability to turn tightly, and almost no fuel left. The Phantoms closed in. He's bleeding speed. One pilot called, "We've got him." Then fate opened a tiny door. One Phantom climbed too early, leaving a narrow empty pocket of sky, a single vertical corridor that hadn't been covered. It lasted less than a second, but the Lightning pilot saw it instantly. With no hesitation, he hit full afterburner and pointed the jet straight through the opening. The Lightning jumped upward one final time, climbing with everything it had left. The Phantoms tried to follow, but they stalled long before reaching him. There would be no stall trap this time. This climb was simply an escape. At 42,000 feet, almost out of fuel, the RAF controller radioed, "Disengage! Return to base." The Lightning pilot cut power and began a shallow dive back toward home, conserving every last drop. The Phantom formation remained below, unable to pursue further. The Lightning reached the runway with barely 600 pounds of fuel dangerously low. The scoreboard told the story clearly. Lightning, 2 kills. Phantoms, 0. In the debriefing room, both sides watched radar recordings showing exactly how the Lightning had escaped detection, executed its vertical ambush, and performed the hammerhead stall trap that left the Phantoms helpless. The Americans realized their tactics had assumed enemies would fight sideways, not climb straight up into sun. Quiet changes were made in doctrine. Radar procedures were adjusted. Vertical scanning became mandatory. High-altitude lookout zones were revised, and instructors across NATO rewrote a small but important part of their training manuals. All because of one aircraft everyone had once called obsolete, the English Electric Lightning. Years later, a Phantom pilot summed it up simply. We built a hunter expecting prey to run sideways. But the Lightning ran up, and that was a lesson. High above the North Sea, the sky still remembers a climb where a small British jet carved a vertical scar through air combat doctrine, a moment of hidden valor that changed the way pilots looked upward forever.